What's goody, Shellitronnn here. You can call me Shells, and I'm back at it again with a brand new video. And today, I want to focus on something that has me really questioning the integrity of the National Football League, and it has me really wondering whether or not this league is actually focused on celebrating the greatness of its best players, or if it's really focused more on becoming the next WWE, where it's more like an athletic soap opera and it's more focused on storylines rather than their league being a true meritocracy. Now, what am I talking about specifically here? I'm talking about the NFL just now releasing their Pro Bowl 2021 rosters, and some guys on this list have me scratching my head as to just how much they actually deserved their spot. Now, I'm not going to focus on the AFC too heavy because I'm really focused more on one particular position group in the NFC, and you have to really help me out here. Y'all have to really help me out to figure out what exactly was the thought process, what exactly was the decision making here, who exactly is in charge of finding out and deciding which players go to the Pro Bowl, and what is the real criteria for Pro Bowl players in the NFL. As you can see, at defensive end, there are three players. There's Cam Jordan from the Saints, there's Brandon Graham from the Eagles, and then there's Chase Young, the second pick overall in this past draft, who plays for the Washington football team. A team that has no name, a guy in Chase Young who is a great story. But his presence on this list has started to make me question exactly what's going on here. Now, let's go and look at Chase Young's stats first. As a rookie, this is a pretty good year for a rookie, okay? He's played in 13 games. He has 38 combined tackles, 27 solo tackles. So for the most part, he's getting one-on-one tackles. He's doing his job. 8 tackles for a loss. 8 hits on the quarterback. But what's the big stat? The big stat we look at for defensive ends is sacks, right? He has 5.5 sacks on this season. He's forced 3 fumbles. He's defended 3 passes, and he has recovered a fumble as well. Actually, he had a scoop and score. He went 47 yards on a fumble recovery. Remember these numbers though. 38 tackles, 5.5 sacks, 3 forced fumbles, and a fumble recovery. Then you see a guy named Brandon Graham, who also made the Pro Bowl this year, a very good player. A very good player. His 2020 stats right here. 42 combined tackles. 33 of them solo. He has 7 sacks on the year. He has 12 tackles for a loss and 14 hits on the quarterback. Those are great numbers. 2 forced fumbles. That's 1 less than my man Chase Young, but he also has a fumble recovery. This guy's played pretty well. In 14 games, I cannot lie, Brandon Graham has played very, very well. But there's a third player who is not on this list, and I'm not going to talk about Cam Jordan. Y'all, look, if you know anything about football, you know that Cam Jordan deserves his spot on the Pro Bowl for name alone, and his stats back him up. I'm not going to sit here and debate about Cam Jordan, but let's look at a guy named Brian Burns who plays for the Panthers. Now, Brian Burns is a second-year player, and this year, he's played pretty well. 14 games. 56 combined tackles. Now let's go back in time. I know this is a while ago. But let's think about how many tackles Chase Young had this year. 38 combined tackles. Brandon Graham, 42 combined tackles. Brian Burns has 56 combined tackles, 33 solo, 20 hits on the quarterback. 20 hits on the quarterback, that's more than Chase Young. And that's more than Brandon Graham. In fact, that is 2 less than Chase Young and Brandon Graham combined. Those 2 players, if you put their QB hits together, only have 2 more QB hits. Y'all don't hear me though. Let's keep going though. 8 sacks on the season. 8 sacks for Brian Burns. Last I checked, Chase Young had 5.5. Brandon Graham had 7. So Brian Burns has a full sack more than Brandon Graham and 2.5 sacks more than Chase Young. Let's keep going. Forced fumbles, he has the same as Chase Young, 1 more than Brandon Graham. Passes defended, the same as Chase Young. I think that's even more than Brandon Graham. I don't think I saw him have any. Brandon Graham has not deflected any passes at all this full season. Now, tell me why a guy like Brian Burns, who has more combined tackles than both Chase Young and Brandon Graham, more sacks than Chase Young and Brandon Graham, the same number of forced fumbles as Chase Young, the same number of passes defended as Chase Young, both of those numbers more than Brandon Graham, how did he not make the Pro Bowl? How did Brian Burns not make the NFL Pro Bowl? And when I started this video, I had a picture up here for you. Now, this picture right here shows Grady Jarrett. Grady Jarrett is more like a defensive tackle, but we're going to leave him up here because this is a good representation and an image that really does show you exactly what we're looking at. You can see it just across the board. These are very, very clearly labeled columns and rows. Each column is a Pro Bowl player. Obviously, the fourth guy has to be a guy not named Cam Jordan, so I understand why Grady Jarrett is on this list. But you can see across the board, in the first category, sacks, Brian Burns has the most. Total tackles, Brian Burns has the most. Forced fumbles, Brian Burns is tied for the most, and he has more than the two other guys on the back end of the list. QB hits, 20 quarterback hits to 8, 14, and 18. Now you tell me, why do you believe Brian Burns did not make the NFL Pro Bowl for the NFC conference? Y'all didn't hear me though. I asked you, why do you believe Brian Burns did not make the Pro Bowl for the NFC? I'm not talking about the man having the most votes of the fans. I don't even mean him being a starter. But he just outright does not go. He outright does not have a spot on the original Pro Bowl roster. For what reason? Why does the NFL not want Brian Burns on this list? Is it possibly because there are two NFC East teams here? Chase Young is a very, very fresh face. Now, Brian Burns is only in his second year in the league, but I can understand the second overall pick, Chase Young, rookie, gets the most votes, and he is a Pro Bowler in his very first year. Brandon Graham is on the Eagles. I mean, for some reason, the NFL still does like the Eagles. The NFC East sells. I get that. It's a business. But at what point does the business side end and the football side kick in? When you look at this graphic right here, just look at this graphic right here, forget the names. If I asked you, which of these guys deserves to be in the Pro Bowl, you can only pick 3. Looking at this list right here, would you leave the guy who's on the furthest left off this list? Do you take off the guy at the furthest left in the blue jersey right here? Of course you wouldn't. So it makes me call into question, what exactly is the NFL playing at here? How much integrity does this game actually have? And I understand the Pro Bowl is what the Pro Bowl is. They're playing it on Madden, a game that hasn't been good in at least 3-4 years. Okay, I understand, but I know there's bonuses involved. I know there's compensation. I know there's other things players get for making the Pro Bowl, starting on the Pro Bowl. You know, these are things these players want, and even just bragging rights, even just pride, you feel me? So explain to me how the NFL can sell us the idea of the league being a meritocracy. The idea of the league being about the best will always rise to the top, the best will always be celebrated, the best will be represented. When you see things like this happening, Brian Burns has the stats to top any of these guys. Any of these guys on this graphic. And he still does not make even the 3rd defensive end spot for the NFC. Maybe I'm overthinking it. Maybe there is some kind of mathematical, analytical, 3rd level, well, actually, sir, when you really crunch the numbers and get down to it kind of thing going on here that really does put guys like Chase Young above Brian Burns this year. Maybe you can close your eyes, squint just a little bit, and look into the sun a little bit as well and tell yourself that you believe that Chase Young has had a better year than Brian Burns. Maybe you can tell yourself that. Maybe you can. But I can't. I'm left to believe the only thing I can believe, and that is that the NFL is more concerned with storylines than it is celebrating its truly great players. There's nothing against, Chase Young. He's going to be a really good player. Okay? These are very, very good stats for a rookie. Okay? Very good stats for a rookie. But they're not better stats than Brian Burns. Brian Burns has better stats than Brandon Graham. Like I said, I could be wrong about this. I sincerely doubt I am, but this is how I feel about it. The NFL has lost a lot of credibility for me. I'm just convinced now that the integrity of the league has just gone downhill, okay? They stole the vote from us. It was a rigged vote from the start. They had no intentions of playing this game fairly, and what can you do? What can you do? They stole the vote. And this right here has been a long time coming. I'm at the point where I want to see the ballots. I gotta see the ballots. How many of the ballots from Carolina Panthers voters were thrown away? I'm trying to figure out how many of the fan votes for Brian Burns weren't counted. How many of the votes from the experts and the media members weren't counted? I want to see the votes. I want them verified from representatives from each division in the NFC. I need someone from the NFC West and someone from the NFC North to come together, look at the ballots, go through them, and say, okay, this guy did get this vote. Well, maybe this wasn't bubbled in correctly. I don't know. Matter of fact, these voting machines, where are they manufactured? If you tell me they're manufactured in Washington or Philadelphia, we got some problems. We got some big problems. That's how I feel about it, bro. I don't want to say conspiracy, but conspiracy.